They won't that's the thing. They won't even be getting redundancy payoffs. That's the interesting thing as well. Well, look, let's talk to Matt Taylor. He is one of those facing just that threat. He's an NHS specialist paramedic working in primary care. Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning to you, Julia. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for joining us. You have been working as a paramedic throughout the pandemic. No working from home for you, dealing no doubt with patients in desperate need, many of whom have had COVID. And yet you now face the sack. Why?
Well, according to my employer, so at 11 o'clock today, I have an informal meeting regarding the government vaccination mandates. So I just wanted to read the subject line of the email. And to paraphrase the email, they said it was being an informal chat with my line manager and HR manager, which we all know when there's more than one manager involved in any kind of meeting, it certainly isn't informal.
And it's rarely good news as well. And this 100%. Is because have you been asked by your employer to produce your proof of having 2 jabs, and you have either presumably not produced that proof or can't produce that proof? Have you been jabbed? I mean, you're free not to answer, by the way. It should be personal information. You don't want to give it. But have you, if you are willing to answer the question, have you chosen not to get jabbed?
I have, indeed.
And do you mind sharing with us that reason why? I mean, given that you've been on the front line, we've heard again and again from nurses and doctors, paramedics, get yourself jabbed, you're crazy not to be jabbed, people are dying in the NHS because they're not jabbed. Why have you chosen not to have the vaccine?
Because it's about body autonomy, Julia. And that's what we need to stay focused on. They've done a very good job in stacking layers upon layers of things on top of the actual autonomy aspect of things and trying to divide the nation into a vax and anti-vax situation. Whereas the bare bones of the whole situation is having control over what goes in and out of your body through informed consent, which seems to have been thrown to the wayside over the last 2 years. So I don't care what people's reasons are for being vaccinated or unvaccinated, because it's a personal choice. There are plenty of things that we do as a nation that we could all argue that aren't beneficial to your health, but that doesn't stop you from integrating into society. The whole medicine aspect of do no harm, informed consent and everything else has just gone completely out the window over the last couple of years. So for me, it's been about, I know that they will not stop at mandating it at just us NHS staff. This is the final hurdle for the government, really. First, it was the care workers. Now it's the NHS staff. Then it will be the hospitality workers because they work in customer-facing roles. And it'll be retail. And then before you know it, it'll be mandated everywhere, which it already is in Italy for people over the age of 50. So it's coming, and people, I don't think, are ready for what's actually going to happen, because the only people this will affect, as was previously mentioned with the NHS staff leaving, will be the patients. And
again, and there are lots of people like me, again, I completely agree with you, bodily autonomy, and I oppose the vaccine passports. I mean, there's an awful lot of people who, everyone I know, and I'm one of those, one of the main reasons I got jabbed was actually because of wanting to travel abroad and other countries requiring it. So it becomes mandated in lots of ways just to live what used to be considered a normal life. And I've really struggled with the idea of people working in care homes or working on the front line of the NHS who chose not to get jabbed. But I defend your right not to have to and not to have to disclose it when there's no reason, particularly with Omicron, that you should be more of a risk. We've seen people who are double jabbed. I'm just recovering from my bout of Omicron. We've got Sir Keir Starmer treble jab. We know that many people who've been boosted are getting this virus, and that they're able to pass this virus on. So even when there was an argument to a certain extent about your ability to pass on the virus to other people, that argument's absolutely gone out the window with Omicron. And we've got the added issue, haven't we, also, of a lack of staff. We've got, 100,000 vacancies in the NHS already, and we're looking at goodness knows how many tens of thousands of NHS staff facing the imminent sack, creating even a bigger problem. It may well be the case that actually, more people will be at risk without you there working at all than they may or may not have been at risk by you not being vaccinated.
100%. And I think what the actual number of staff that aren't vaccinated is difficult to ascertain, because some staff members have chosen to have their medical records withdrawn. So they don't know what the actual figure is. And that's people that have had, between 1 and 2. Many other staff members don't want to have the third because they've seen their colleagues go down through being poorly and everything as well. So it's a difficult situation for us because obviously we all get into this job because we want to care for patients. It's certainly not for the pay and the conditions and the political games that's played with the NHS throughout its history. But this is where it gets morally complicated for us because I don't want to lose my job, but I'm prepared to lose my job, and I was prepared to lose my job way before this started. I've got brilliant support from my wife and my family, some parts. Which makes the decision a lot easier. And I appreciate not everybody's in the same sort of position as I am, but I want a decent future for my son, and I do not want him to have to grow up in this situation where he potentially may have to take a jab from when he's 11 years old, 3 a year till the end of time.
And again, we've never had this for MMR, which we know saves children's lives, and yet people being expected to jab their children at virtually zero risk from COVID if they are healthy with no underlying conditions. But have you, given that you've been on the front line and you've been dealing with COVID patients, are you of the view that you've actually already had COVID already anyway?
Well, the irony is for 2 years I was absolutely fine, and I have to blame my wife. She went out just before Christmas, came home, felt a bit unwell. Obviously, we have lateral flow tests in the house because we test before the restrictions came in. We were testing regularly, and she tested positive. I didn't test myself because I wanted to see how far I could go. Unfortunately, on the day she tested positive, we had a snog, and then 3 or 4 days later, I started to feel unwell and tested positive. So I was unwell for 10 days. I was out of Corona jail on Christmas Day, and it was, I'm not playing it down, it was like a flu. I was okay. I wasn't dead or dying. The hardest part was entertaining my 4-year-old because we both had it at the same time. But it was okay. So I thought I may have caught it. But what the funny thing was is obviously I've been going to patients that have had it symptomatic. And I've been fine coming home to my family, and they've been fine. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't get transmitted, but what I'm saying is the only way I physically got it was snogging my wife on the day she was
Stop kissing your wife. That's the lesson for all of us there, isn't it? But that's the thing. I mean, again, that close contact and wearing PPE and the like. Do you think that, again, one of my big worries is that we're going to end up having this mandated, and we're seeing other countries, we're seeing Italy, I mean, we've seen what's happened with Australia, with New Zealand, Italy, Austria, Germany, France. I mean, it is creeping, this authoritarianism is creeping. There has been, we're seeing a rowing back of restrictions in the UK, and we haven't seen any of the same sort of restrictions we've seen across much of Europe over this winter period as it is. Are you hopeful that the tide has turned and that the government may change their mind on this, or do you think that you will be out on your ear on the 1st of April if you refuse to succumb to this rule?
I don't trust anything the government says anymore. I haven't done for the last 2 years. And all I'm seeing, to be honest with you, is media influence suggesting that this may happen. And if you look at the wording of a lot of the articles, it's the government could do this, the government may do this. So there's no concrete anything there. And I'm still having my meeting today, which will probably still tell me that if I'm not jabbed, I will be out by the 1st of April. So for me, it doesn't matter in that regard, but I don't trust the government in anything that they say or do or anything anymore.
Matt Taylor, really appreciate you joining us. I'm really sorry you're in this predicament. I think a lot of people are listening right now will be cheering you on. Again, you're fighting for the rights of everybody else, and I think a lot of people have that fear that, it starts with care workers, then it's the NHS workers, then it's pretty much everyone else. And mandating jabs, it's just not what we do in this country. We'll be talking about that and plenty more besides with lots more top guests. We'll talk to actually the government minister James Heapy, and up next we will be also talking to the director of Big Brother Watch, Silky Carlo.